Hello, and welcome to American Amnesia. I am your host, Cliff Garner, and today I'm going to do a few things with actually the Paris Climate Agreement and the hoopla and the hot breathing and everything else going on with that. I'd also like to get around to talking about derivatives a little bit, kind of get you broken in on that, because there's to examine what's really going on here with the money. You really have to know about the derivatives that are backing it, and that goes into cap and trade and things like that. So I'd like to at least kind of set some groundwork for that, because this is a type of thing we'll come back to, because even to examine the economic meltdown of 2008, you really have to know about the derivatives that were behind those as well, and that's pretty necessary knowledge. Now there's also the London Bridge terrorist attacks, and I'll address issues pertaining to that here in the future, probably next couple of days actually. But for now, I want to get into this Paris climate. There's a lot of material, a lot of things to know about to really understand it. Although there's some things that are really plain. I mean, some of it's just really just intuitive, which is why the hand-wringing that's been going on over it is just idiotic. I mean, it really is intuitive. It was well. The thing was that we had the Kyoto Accords, and those were just a total unmitigated disaster. It doesn't matter really what you believe as occurring with climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it. That isn't even the issue when it really comes down to what is intuitively wrong with all of this approach to it that the international community has done. Really what they've been trying to do, and really it sums up in that they're trying to bilk the American public for a lot of money and give it to other countries. And the UN has been doing this for quite a while now. And you know, you got the Europeans, they don't pay their way. They don't care. They just want to pull more money out of us and throw it at other places and have themselves feel better about flagellating themselves about their old empires, and now feel better. I will name two empires that don't feel guilty at all, and a third as well. The Turkish Ottoman Empire is not being lamented. In fact, it's being reasserted. And part of that is to actually for Erdogan is to bring back the caliphate, and of course he will be the caliph in charge of the caliphate. So that is a caliph, and that is really what he wants to do. That's of course that's what the meaning of the Imam Mahdi would be when you really come right down to it. Another one is the Arab empire that once stretched from Spain to China, and they are unrepentant. Those are two, and the third would be the Chinese. And there is no repentance, there is no hand-wringing, there's none of this guilt. There is no Muslim guilt about the caliphates. There's no Chinese guilt about the Chinese empires. I mean, it's just not there. So, you know, people get over it. I am through with the white guilt. I don't want to hear it. I'm a very fair part American Indian. If you want to call it Native American, fine. You know, the phrase means born in America. Okay. You know, I mean, let's get over it, people. So, you know, as far as it goes, you know, you can criticize me all you want, but as far as it goes, I was not raised on the reservation, so I don't consider myself Native American, although I have a large amount of that in my veins, and parts of my family faced discrimination on account of it. Get over it. I'm the child of the victors, and I'm the child of the victims. So are you. Get over it. So, at any rate, there's a few articles that I would like to look at real quick, and I have them dialed up on my computer here. One of the reasons why I'm trying to do this way, use this method on the camera, is because it gives me access to my laptop. Although I'd like to have more better sound technique and stuff like that, but at the same time, my camera's a decent little thing. It's not top of the line, and it's not brand new. It's a few years old, and but it's not a bad little camera. And at any rate, for the time being, I'm going to use, you know, work around with it, see how that does. And at any rate, I'll put links for all these articles that I have dialed up here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things dialed up here. I might not get to all of them. We'll see on the time here. But the first one here is from the Daily Wire, and it's called 7 Things You Need to Know About the Paris Accord. And this is a decent little article. President Trump announced Thursday that the United States will be withdrawing from the Paris Accord, much to the dismay of tree-hugging alarmists leftists everywhere. Despite the left's apocalyptic rhetoric, leaving the Paris Accord was the right call based on a simple cost-benefit analysis. Here are 7 things you need to know about the Paris Accord. First, under the Accord, the U.S. had the target of reducing its carbon emissions to 26 to 28% below 2005 levels by 2025. That alone would have resulted in extreme changes in energy use, because even Mr. Obama's bevy of anti-carbon regulations would get the United States to a mere 45% of its target, according to the Wall Street Journal editorial board. And that's one of these intuitive things that really I was appalled when I watched what Obama did with this. It was a disaster in the making. He wanted to make this is part of his legacy, okay? And he wanted to force feed this to us. He wasn't even going to put it before the Senate, so there's no reason for us to even consider this law in the U.S. It's not. As a matter of fact, if the UN wants to try to push it on us, we should shove it back in their face and say where they can put it. Number 2, the Accord would have required the countries involved to raise their carbon emission cutting goals every 5 years. According to the Daily Signal, the Obama administration intended to curb carbon emissions by 80%, essentially North Korea levels. Of course, they don't really do much there. Number 3, the accord is non-binding legally, but activist courts may have used it as a legal weapon. And we've seen that. I mean, they try to use Sharia law. As it is, you know, it's like, are you people out of your minds? They are. They really are. And they shouldn't be sitting on benches. As a matter of fact, what we need to do is start getting some of these people removed. They can be removed. Number 3, the court is non-binding legally, but activist courts may have used it as a legal weapon. Daily Wire editor-in-chief Ben Shapiro noted that Trump's White House counsel, Donald McGahn, argued that courts, quote, could theoretically use the Paris Accord to strike down Trump's attempted rollback of carbon emission regulations from the Environmental Protection Agency, end quote. Really? Despite the left's insistence to the contrary, this could have been a real possibility, as the judiciary record of late shows a preference towards policy rather than law itself. See, that's the thing. There's no legal basis for using policy instead of legal precedent. Law trumps policy. I mean, law should shape policy. This is where the left is, so-called left. It really isn't the left. Where the so-called left has really been very dangerous, and really needs to be addressed, really without mercy. This is not the way to run the country, and they shouldn't be allowed to do it. And they're giving the example of Trump's travel ban. Well, you know, too bad. Law trumps policy. Law should shape policy. Shouldn't be the other way around. Shapiro also pointed out that the left is acting as if the world will burn up for leaving the accord, which begs the question: if the accord is voluntary, why is it acting in such a hysterical manner, in which they'd be like, we can't leave it? Yeah, we can. And not only that, they need to get over it. Number 4. The accord doesn't hold China and India to a very high standard. Very intuitive here. Via the journal's editorial, China and India offered benchmarks pegged to GDP growth, which means that they can continue their current energy plans. China won't even begin reducing emissions until 2030, and in the next 5 years it will use more coal. China also can't be trusted to reduce their carbon emissions since they have a history of misrepresenting their total emission levels, which they just got caught at. The timing was pretty amazing. So if they're not going to be held to the same account, then there is no reason to hold ourselves to really a draconian level. There is no reason, none whatsoever. And we have China, which alone, it's 30% of the total emissions, alone. And they're going to up that. They've already told us they're going to build more coal plants. They don't care. Now, we have a better record of doing it on our own, which we did do on our own when we turned down to Kyoto. We walked away, and we actually did better than the rest of the world did. So, you know, as far as it goes, they can go screw. No, I'm serious. We do fine. We have been more conscientious as a society. Don't you understand? See, this is the problem the left has. They can't even acknowledge its successes, because to acknowledge its successes, then it becomes irrelevant. This is a success that should be acknowledged, and they can't acknowledge it. Unfortunately, the Republicans won't acknowledge it. But you know, the thing is that there are people in the Republican Party that are glad of this. And there are probably some within the Democratic Party that are too. So, as far as it goes, let's start talking about this. We might not be done when we succeed, But the point is that not acknowledging progress and success really undermines the whole thing. I mean, why would we need 8 more years of Obama if he was successful? Right? Huh. Well, why would we not need him if he was successful? Isn't that a more interesting question? Why should we reward failure? Or did he not fail? See, with all the hysteria, they're not answering those questions. They're talking out both sides of their mouths. And they're right both ways. Well, we need more of this. Well, why? If it succeeded, then do we need more measures of that type? Or is this was there success? Can we claim success and go home? There's a difference. You know, this is the idea of progress. The idea of progress is building upon things. The progressives are no longer progressive. They've become regressive, into which they have to force you to believe as opposed to acknowledge or at least examine the evidence and say that it is moving forward in some fashion. And they won't produce any evidence to show us that. It's become a secular religion. Now that's not saying that all progressives are this way, and they're not. And don't get me in that corner, because I don't believe that in the least. I don't agree with a lot of things that they're talking about, but you know, at the same time, I do acknowledge that you know, it presents at least a satisfactory presentation of ideas. You know, I mean, they present ideas in a logical way. That's why I kept saying, you know, everybody's like, oh, Obama's a socialist. And I kept saying, no, he's not. I wish he were. Now here's the rub. This is really where it goes. Just always follow the money. Look at the money. Where's the money coming from? Where's it going? Who benefits? Cui bono? Number 5. And this tells the whole story, really. The U.S. had pledged $5 billion a year to the UN's Green Climate Fund, United Nations. Oh, just a lovely group of people. Not. Under the accord, participants would provide $100 billion to organizations like Green Climate Fund to provide money to poorer countries to neutralize the costs of curtailing carbon emissions. The Obama administration had already funneled $1 billion to the organization without congressional approval as part of a $3 billion pledge. He didn't bother with Congress. He didn't bother with getting a congressional approval. He had this vision of a propaganda victory, pulling Hillary Clinton through so that she could maintain his legacy, that she would kind of be forced to maintain his legacy. And that was probably part of the agreement. It was her maintaining that. And they were so surprised that they didn't hoodwink the whole country with their propaganda. They really were. They thought between propaganda and insufficient cheating in the elections, which I think we're finding a little more evidence of as we go along, that did occur, but not to the extent that it would have taken for them to have won. They didn't capitalize on the propaganda well enough. People have become suspicious of the MSM, the mainstream media, and because of that, this it was a failure, just an outright failure. So that flopped because they couldn't hoodwink us. But such funding would hardly have helped impoverished nations. The South African activist Leon Liu, who works for an influential free market think tank in Africa, told Climate Depot in 2011, this has been going on for a while now, what the government of rich countries are saying to poor countries is, Those of you who are best at causing poverty, we will enrich you, we will give you money, Liu told Climate Depot while attending the UN Climate Summit. Government-to-government aid is a reward for bettering than anyone else at causing poverty. Countries that get more government-to-government aid have lower economic growth rates. Countries with less aid have higher growth rates. If you subsidize failure, you get failure, and foreign aid does exactly that. It rewards people for being successful. And really it was the money. People like good old Uncle Bob down in Zimbabwe are the people that are just sitting there going like this. And they always do when it comes to, things like the UN. And the UN usually comes through and throws money at them. So the corruption would have been one of the main drains on all that money in the first place. And the second would have been all the costs that the UN itself would have taken, and that would have come before they threw any of the money at the countries involved. China was one of the countries looking for a huge paycheck. India also was looking for a huge paycheck for doing nothing and polluting more than really just about the whole world itself. So as far as it goes, rewarding failure, yes. Rewarding the UN for existing, yes. That's what it would have been. A lot of this money would have been a total waste, and that is a fact. Number 6, and this should make you angry anyway. If you're for improving the climate, if you think that the climate change is such an important thing, the real effect is almost nil. Don't you get it, people? They're burning you. They're using you as useful idiots. Wake up. Number 6, the Accord's impact on the climate would have been minimal. Bjorn Lomborg, president of the Copenhagen Consensus Center, estimates, that if all the promised cuts in the Accord were implemented, temperature would decline only by 0.17 degrees Celsius in 2100. Okay, so 2100. And that's 80 plus years down the road, The U.S. cuts under the Accord would be responsible for reducing the temperatures by 0.031 degrees Celsius at the same time frame. That's almost nothing. Dr. Roy Spencer, climate scientist, noted in the column that the reduction in temperature under the Accord is unmeasurable by current global monitoring networks. And he's for it. If you're figuring that China and India are not going to even help, as a matter of fact, they're going to make things worse. They're going to make things worse and get paid for it? Hello? And you're going to expect progress from that? Are you really? Are you really stupid? I hate to ask you that, but that is the question. It's not going to do anything. Symbolic at best, and it's a terrible symbol. Number 7. The Accord's impact on the economy, on the other hand, would have been detrimental. According to Lomborg, the Accord would cost between $1 to $2 trillion a year worldwide after 2030. You heard that. $1 to $2 trillion a year worldwide after 2030. By 2035, U.S. would have lost over $2.5 trillion in GDP, according to the Heritage Foundation. When putting it all together, the cost-benefit analysis is clear. Withdrawing from the Paris Accord was the right move. A minimal decline in temperature for economy calamity is not a wise trade-off. And really, you know, that's really what you get to when you look at it. You look at any agreement or contract or anything else, and that's what this is. This is a treaty, which is really only means it's between countries, and not just one or two. You know, it's a major thing, but it's still a contract. Hello, it's a contract. That's what it is. People are agreeing to do things, and people are agreeing not to do things, and they're talking about money passing and everything else. Hello? If it's not beneficial, why sign it? Our government has been signing pieces of crap for years. They should quit. I'm glad we have somebody in that actually understands what a contract means. That's part of why he got elected. You know, I didn't choose him as my first person. But you know, there was always this possibility. If he came through on certain things, that maybe he'd be the right guy. And I watched and I watched and I watched and I watched all the others turn out to be total turds. Just total turds. And I wasn't going to vote for Jill Stein. Her economics was bad. And Trump, and she agreed on with some of the good things. And you can't take that away. The TPP's toast. But you don't just sign a treaty just to sign it. You sign it because there's an advantage to it. There is no advantage to this for the U.S. None whatsoever. Okay, the next one I'm going to look at is from Anonymous, and it cropped up a couple other places as well. It's written by a guy named Joey Clark. And it's an anti-media op-ed. But there's a lot of good things in here, and I wanted to go over it. President Trump's decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Accord has thrown the world into a blazing furnace full of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Or the political world, at least, has been thrown into a fierce tizzy. Fiery tizzy, I'm sorry. Fierce I thought was a better word, but fiery, that's not bad. Okay. The front page of the New York Daily News reads, Trump to world, drop dead. Decides to hell with science, Earth's future. Okay. And we keep hearing that kind of sentiment. Former President Barack Obama broke his silence. Broke his silence. Really? Yeah. I don't know when he shut up. Okay. Saying in part that with his decision, the Trump administration, quote, joins a small handful of nations that reject the future, unquote. Oh, really? You mean they rejected a failed future? Okay. Former Secretary of State John Kerry lambasted Trump's decision as an ignorant, cynical appeal to an anti-science special interest faction, as well as saying this choice will be rightly remembered as one of the most shameful any president has made. And the list goes on and on and on. And they have a couple links there. To similar hand-wringing, salt mining that was on the web. Okay, to hear these people talk, apparently the human race can only progress to the future and create new industries and technologies if we are flogged into it begrudgingly by our wise government and corporate leaders. Are we really ready to presume what human society will look like several decades from now? Are we seriously expected to believe that government action is the only way to tackle the problem of climate change? If we fail to use the heavy hand of government to brave the future, why should we assume the human race will fail to innovate and adapt to complex challenges on its own? Imagine, if you will, a world where you cannot turn to governments to solve problems such as climate change. How would you achieve your righteous ends? Would you simply do nothing if you could not turn to government? I'm going to stop there. I think one of the most remarkable women that I had listened to, and I couldn't even tell you her name, that talked about this issue, was an Indian scientist. And she was arguing with people that were doing this geoengineering, which is really kind of what they're trying to do with this climate change science. And it's supposed science, because it's really pseudoscience. The real science, and there's a lot of people in science, real science, that believe in the climate change and stuff like that, but they also qualify it with a lot of other things, and they don't agree with the solution that the politicians have been making. But she was saying that it is far more important to find a way to live with this change that will occur, because it's going to come anyway. There's no way that we could turn it around by this time anyway. It's already done deal. If it's what it is. And they're not even sure. They're not sure what all the processes are. In fact, a lot of them think it's cyclical. And that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's probably part cyclical, and the degree of human influence, I think, that's where the question is. But I think that there is cyclical. There was a cycle that occurred towards the end of the medieval era and at the beginning of the Renaissance. There was a greenhouse that caused a food boom. You know, if you do it right, this could be a blessing to all of humanity. You know, we don't control the earth; it controls us. Hello. Or you know, and there's a point where it'll tell us when we're messing up too. And if it decides, you know, or if it reacts in such a way to where we start dying, then there might not be any change anyway. But that's the thing. It's just like George Carlin said. What kind of arrogant bullshit is this where we have to save everything? And we can't just save a person. We have to save the whole flippin' world. Hello? What kind of arrogance is this? What kind of stupidity is this? Because we're not really doing the little things that would take actually to do it. It takes little things, not these big things. What are you talking about? So, at any rate, but she was saying that we need to learn to adapt. We need to learn to do what to do. Is what can we do to make agriculture work for us? How are we to bring down the level of CO2 by it being absorbed by the trees to up our level of oxygen? Hello? That's where the answer should be, people. Not throwing money around and not enabling a bunch of tin pot dictators to just keep their countries as foul as they can be. I return to the article. How would you achieve your righteous ends? Would you just simply do nothing if you could not turn to government? I ask because too often noble goals serve as a Trojan horse for political control. That's where this goes. It's not just the money, but the money, watch the money. Governments often present us with grand solutions as gifts for our real and perceived problems, but once inside the gates, they proceed to saddle our communities with a slew of regulations. That's one thing that's been holding us back. Mandates, taxes is another one. Diktats, where they just come in and tell you what to do. Quotas. Oh yeah. Quotas, subsidies, where they give people money, take it from somebody else, give it to somebody, give it to another person. Penalties and the like. The cursed gift of government, it seems, is always a central plan that conflates voluntary cooperation, collective action, and even community itself with centralized political control. Decentralize. That's my philosophy. Smaller is better. But we do not need the trappings of central planning to solve all our collective problems. So society can run itself. Thank you very much. It needs no single creator or director. Well, I believe in the creator, personally. But he gives us free will. Society already has great gifts for solving complex human issues, individual liberty, initiative, and ingenuity, along with the free and open exchange of goods and ideas. And we need not sacrifice these liberal benefactors of the modern world to dream impossible dreams and fight unbeatable foes. The greatest achievements of the human race have not come from government committees and accords, but from intrepid yet everyday individuals working in concert to tackle the unknown and implacable through innovation and persuasion. Yet rather than allowing people to freely choose and coordinate their own plans in our common struggle against nature, too many people first brand other people as the problem. Back at you, you global warmist idiots. You useful idiots for the globalists and the huge corporations and a nasty, nasty centralized government. Congratulations, you've been hoodwinked. Too many would rather rely on commanding and controlling others to fix humanity's wicked problems than to freely solve the problem themselves. Too many conflate the government's failure to act as society signaling we are resigned to do nothing. Thus, the weeping and gnashing of teeth over Donald Trump's recent decision. I find all the hysterics and tears of hubris laughable. This mindset deserves to be mocked for its lack of imagination and obsequious acceptance of corporate cronyism and global governance as the only path to the future. Mockery, yes, that's a good idea. More to it. It deserves to be mocked for claiming the singular appearance of doing something, without much effect, is better than actually tackling the problem from many different directions. It deserves to be mocked even on an environmental activist grounds as a list of empty promises and half measures, as a perversion of the cause, just as a free trader may mock NAFTA, or an anti-war activist may mock Barack Obama receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. Oh boy, do those deserve mockery. They are mockeries. And it deserves to be mocked for how little it respects the ability of average people to change their station and adapt to the changing world on their own without the pretentious prodding of their government leaders. Well, you know, I have a lot more faith in the average person. I'm willing to bet the existence of the entire human race that without the Paris Climate Accord, we will rise to meet the challenge of climate change successfully. And I agree. Further, if we would shrink government generally, that is, give average people the freedom to think and trade as they wish in the energy sector or any other industry, then by the Accord's own target year of 2100, the market, which is simply free people trading and producing as they wish based on their own enlightenment, will have reduced carbon emissions and given us new technologies beyond the wildest dreams of those now bemoaning the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord. In fact, the U.S. clean energy sector has grown leaps and bounds in only the last few years despite the lack of a robust central plant. That's what I'm saying. Coal is already giving way to cleaner forms of energy. Hello? Hello? And will continue to do so no matter what Donald Trump promises the miners in West Virginia. But we'll still mine it, we'll sell it to somebody else. There might be a use for it somewhere down the road anyway. They'll squeeze it and turn it into petroleum, who knows? That's what they're doing with fracking, I mean, come on. And the fact is that there is this burgeoning clean energy industry does not mean we should engage in crony capitalism and wealth distribution between nations to prime the pump. Again, what kind of idiocy are you dealing with? Hello? Crony capitalism. Al Gore was sitting there waiting at the end of the tunnel there to hopefully have all that stuff fall in his lap. And you're not offended by that. You're not offended by the subsidies that Obama gave to his pals who went bankrupt and stole the money and went away. Cylinder I'm thinking of right now. But there were others. And then all the regulations and laws and taxes and everything else that they put on people to slow it down and keep it from happening. They're talking out of both sides of their mouths. They don't want us to do it. They want to give it to somebody else, some other country. And then they want to beat us up with China. I'm not going to even listen to that. Because really, China's not doing that much with it. I watch Turkey. Now they're probably doing as much as China. One thing I think we ought to look at is there's a power plant in eastern Turkey. I forget where. That's just using garbage. Take a look at that. Look at using things like friction to drive cars. The limits of your imagination, they just boggle me. And you want to force a government on us. No. Take your government and shove it. And you can take Obama up there and shove him too. Picking winners and losers in the clean energy sector is just as bad as doing it in any other sector, including the fossil fuels industry. And those people are already out in front. They're the ones that are going to benefit from all this cap and trade bullshit anyway. Must we really kowtow to corporations and their client states by granting them government privileges and sweetheart deals to create new technologies they already have enough incentive to create anyway? No. If we wish to solve the climate change problem, I suggest we try, first and foremost, to create products and services that will actually make people's lives better immediately, rather than imposing immense costs up front with no clear time horizon wherein we reap the benefits. Oh, it's in the here and after, right? Yeah, well, okay. That's your secular premise? Okay. Fine utopia you make. Just as one need not convince people of evolution before they take vaccines or life-saving drugs, there's no need to convince people of the science of climate change if you can sell them a better, cheaper, cleaner, and more practical way to power their lives. You don't have to bother. Shaming, lecturing, and trying to control people's behavior through the political process for unclear results and opaque benefits is not serving this cause well, as sound science and noble the cause may be. Ironically enough, Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Accord may well usher in a new era of initiative to absent the federal government. After Trump's decision, many industry leaders, mayors, and governors pledged to pursue solutions to climate change absent the federal government. Yeah, do it. Most of you want to do the same idiocy, but you know, if you come up with something interesting, call me. As CEO of General Electric, Jeff Immelt tweeted, "Climate change is real. The industry must now lead and not depend on government." Well, good idea. That's the spirit, Jeff, but my only question is what the hell have you been waiting for? Industry and the people in the United States have been saying this a long time ago. It's time to stop looking to central governments and global committees, whether the issue is climate change or poverty or education or whatever, to make our world a better place. And that's the whole bloody idea. Decentralize. Industry and the people of the United States should have been saying this a long time ago. It's time to stop looking to central governments and global committees, whether the issue is climate change or poverty or education or whatever, to make our world a better place. That is really important. I said it twice. It's time for us to pursue the future ourselves is long overdue. It would be a shame to sell ourselves in the future short because we're too busy bickering over our political power. We're not in politics. Let's get politics out of it. Get the money out of politics get the politics out of money. And it just irritates me to no end that we constantly hear this weeping and moaning, and it's nonsense. It was nonsense at the beginning. It's been this whole crybaby butthurt bullshit. Shove it. Stick it right into that butt that you've been crying over. Give you something to whine about. And I'm glad to see it happen. When they started the whole issue, they were looking at how they were going to make money on it, and they were looking at creating some kind of economic mechanism they could use to buy, sell, gamble basically with, but also to control a market in a very artificial manner. So one of the things that they would naturally look for would be a type of financial derivative, and there have always been derivatives of some kind or another, and the reason is that there are financial angles to I shouldn't say that. There are financial issues attached to the particular product itself at times, and those are able to be as it were monetized to where they can be used to create a market device where there is no product yet. Okay, you see what I'm saying? The product doesn't exist yet, but there is the promise of creating the product. And there's a lot of these different things that have been done over the centuries, and some of them are more successful than others, and the more successful ones remain with us to this day. The existence of a corporation, for example, is a very fine example of an asset that is created from the existence of a business entity that may not exist yet. And I'll demonstrate this. If you have a business and you just open it up, you have to have all the startup money, you have to have all the startup equipment, you have to have the people lined up to pay them to do the job, and then you have to produce the product itself, and then be able to do all the other functions such as shipping and marketing and everything else to be able to start getting your money to return. Okay, so that's a lot of money up front. That's why starting a business is not easy. That is also why these regulations are killing our economy, and they need to stop doing it, especially here in Illinois. The Democrats just don't understand any kind of business outside of running a government, and they understand that all too well, but they don't understand anything else. That's why they're strangling the state, and very stupidly so. So that issue of being able to start up the company can be addressed by selling off shares of the company itself to people who have money to put into the project to get it started. And those would be stocks. Ta-da! That is a derivative of ownership, okay?